You're the funeral director who learned that a coffin is the one box no one ever dares to open. This is you. Past midnight in the cold room of your funeral home, the hum of the refrigeration, the only sound. A body on the table in front of you, and a coffin beside it that weighs a great deal more than the dead man ever did. You're not grieving, you're calculating. Because somewhere along the line, you figured out the thing that built your fortune. In a world full of checkpoints and searches and suspicious eyes, there is exactly one container that authority lets pass with its hat off and its head bowed, a coffin. And you own the only ones in town. Welcome to the trade in the quiet, where grief is a curtain and the dead carry secrets for the living. Rewind. You inherited the place from your father, who inherited it from his 3 generations of dignified men in dark suits, shaking hands at the worst moment of people's lives, making a modest, respectable living off the one certainty there is. You were going broke doing it honest. A big corporate chain moved in across town and undercut you, and you were weeks from losing the family name, when a man you'd buried business with before came to you with a strange request and a thick envelope. He needed something moved across a state line, quietly, in something nobody would search. And you looked at the row of caskets in your showroom and you understood. You learned the rules that night. Rule 1. A funeral is the one event the whole world agrees to look away from. The cops, the customs men, even the border. Rule 2. A hearse runs red lights legally, a coffin crosses lines unopened, and a grieving family is the most invisible cargo there is. Rule 3. The one that lays your whole future out cold and straight. You don't sell funerals. You sell passage through every checkpoint, in the one box no one dares to open. Stage 1. The first job is small. A package in a sealed casket, a transfer of remains across the state line, paperwork you forge with a steady hand, because death paperwork is the one kind nobody double checks. You drive it yourself in the hearse, and you sail through a checkpoint where they'd have torn apart any van, because the officer takes one look at the casket, takes off his hat, and waves you through with his eyes down. The envelope they pay you with is fatter than a month of honest funerals. And you understand, washing your hands in the cold room afterward, that you've been sitting on a smuggling route disguised as a sacrament your whole life. The lesson settles cold as the table. The best place to hide a thing is inside the one ritual people are too uncomfortable to question. Stage 2. One favor isn't a business. You need a system, and your system is genius because it's already built. Every funeral home has the infrastructure, a fleet of hearses, cold storage, sealed containers, cross-state and cross-border remains transfers, and a paperwork pipeline that the authorities trust without thinking. So you start running cargo on the bones of the funeral trade. You schedule shipments of remains, the way you schedule services. You build false bottom caskets, you weight them right. You keep a real corpse in the upper layer for the rare time someone's brave enough to crack the lid, because nobody keeps looking once they've seen a dead man's face. The lesson seats itself. The perfect cover isn't a lie no one can disprove. It's a truth too grim for anyone to inspect. Stage 3. A corporate funeral chain manager, the one who nearly ran you out of town, gets nosy. He notices your dying little home is suddenly thriving, handling more transfers than a place your size should, and he starts asking questions, sniffing for a scandal he can use to finally bury you. So you don't fight him. You bury him in his own respectability. You quietly arrange for a small, ugly scandal to surface at his chain. Mishandled remains, a regulatory violation, the kind of thing that's poison in the death business where trust is everything. While he's drowning in lawyers and bad press, you graciously take over the contracts and families he can no longer serve, expanding your reach under the cover of being the trustworthy local alternative. You didn't beat your rival, you let the public bury him and inherited his customers. And the lesson goes in like a nail in a lid. In a business built on trust, you don't attack a rival. You stain his dignity and let the mourners do the rest. Stage 4. Now you stop moving packages and start moving people's problems. Because you've realized the coffin can carry more than cargo. It can carry the truth itself, in or out of existence. A powerful family needs an inconvenient death to be quietly natural and quickly cremated before anyone asks questions. You're the man who signs, embalms, and burns, and ash tells no tales. A man needs to disappear from the world entirely. To stop being hunted, to become legally dead, you can produce the body, the certificate, the grieving service, the headstone, a whole death, custom made. You become the broker of mortality itself, the man who can make a death real or fake, public or silent, for the right price. And you etch the rule into the marble. Control how a man's death is recorded, and you control whether he ever really existed. Stage 5. You climb past the criminals into the powerful, because the powerful die too, and they die with secrets. When a senator, a judge, a tycoon dies with something in his estate that must never come to light, a second family, a damning ledger, a body that shouldn't be where it is, his people come to you, the discreet man who handles the end with such dignity. And you handle it, you also remember it. You become the keeper of how this city's great men really died, and what they were really hiding when they did. A silent archive of every powerful family's worst secret, gathered at the one moment they're too shattered to be careful. You don't blackmail them, you simply remain very discreet, and very expensive, and very necessary. And the lesson lands heavy as a closing vault. People guard their secrets all their lives and hand them to the Undertaker at the door. Stage 6. There's a weakness. You're one home in one town, and a smuggling route needs reach. So you expand the family. You buy up struggling funeral homes across the region, install your own discreet men, and build a quiet network of the dead that spans state lines and borders, a chain of cold rooms and trusted hearses, and unquestioned paperwork that can move anything, hide anyone, and erase any death, anywhere. You become the silent owner of how an entire region grieves, and every checkpoint in it tips its hat to your fleet. And the rule goes in like the last shovel of earth. Don't own one quiet door, own every funeral home in the region, so the whole map looks away at once. And one gray morning you stand in your showroom, among the empty caskets, the smell of lilies and embalming fluid thick in the air, and you understand you've made it. This is the peak. There is not a body that crosses this region, a death that gets recorded, a secret that goes into the ground, without your hand on it and your blessing over it. The crime bosses and the senators who'd never have shaken your hand now need you, because you're the man who handles the one thing none of them can avoid, and all of them want managed. You came up the broke heir to a dying name, and you turned the most somber, most overlooked trade in the world into ownership of every secret a man takes to his grave. You learned what no one with money ever learns until the end. Everyone bows to the Undertaker eventually, because everyone, eventually, needs the one box no one will open. Here's where it rots, and it rots from you. Because a man who's hidden so much inside the dead starts to believe nothing of his can ever be dug up. And that's the exact man who stops covering the graves. You get arrogant. You stop driving the hearse yourself. Stop checking the paperwork. Stop assuming anyone would dare crack a lid on your operation. You keep a ledger. Every package, every faked death, every powerful family's real secret, because you've stopped seeing it as a noose and started seeing it as the proof of how far the broke heir climbed. You spent your whole life knowing that everything buried can, with the right warrant, be exhumed, and forgot that you too had buried things. The man who hides the truth in coffins always forgets that coffins can be opened by anyone willing to dig. The fall comes from the apprentice, the quiet young mortician you trained because he had the same steady hands and stronger stomach you once had, the one you walked through every false bottom and every forged certificate like a proud father. He learned the trade, the route, the art of the recorded death. What he learned best was your own first lesson, that the one who controls how a death is recorded controls everything, and that there's only room for one such man. He's been keeping his own records, and he's gone to the authorities with a deal. The Undertaker has half the regions powerful by the throat, but I know where everybody is, and I'll trade them for immunity and the business. He doesn't have to dig up your whole empire. He just has to hand them the one ledger and a single coffin worth opening. Every apprentice you teach to hide a body eventually remembers exactly where they're all buried. So now it's tonight, the climax. There's a service scheduled you didn't book, a casket in your cold room you didn't prepare, and when you lift the lid, because for once you have to look, it's empty, waiting, your size. Headlights sweep the parking lot. It's him, with the men he made his deal with, coming for the keys to the kingdom of the dead. He calls you from the doorway, calm, the way you taught him. He has the ledger, he's already made copies. Of course he has, you taught him that too. And he offers you the only 2 boxes left. 2 choices, and the grave doesn't care which. Door 1, you hand it over. You give him the homes, the network, the root, the archive of every secret you ever buried, and you walk out into the daylight a free man and a finished one, an old Undertaker who'll be buried by a stranger in a box he doesn't own, knowing the whole quiet trade still runs on a system you built but no longer command. You live, you just stop being the one who looks away. Door 2, you don't hand it over. You've got one secret he doesn't know about. The real truth of how the most powerful man in the region actually died. The kind of thing that doesn't ruin a rival but topples a dynasty and brings the law down on everyone. The kind that comes with a fresh row of graves. You go to war with the boy you made and the authorities he's bargaining with, in a region whose every coffin bends to you, and you find out whether the man who hid everyone's death can dodge his own. Maybe you take it all back. Maybe you learn that the Undertaker in the end always rides in the hearse. He just doesn't usually get to choose the day. The handover, or the last secret. The borrowed box, or the scorched dynasty. The empty casket is open in the cold room, exactly your size, and a man you taught is standing in the doorway with the lid in his hands. You make the call. That's a wrap for today. I'll be dropping more stories like this soon. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one.